down about 2%. Town portion is $5.92, which is down about 2.5%. And the state education tax is up about 4%. The overall tax rate has increased about 3%. Also, in terms of our New Hampshire's tax year, starts on April 1st and goes through March 31st of the next year. And in terms of the county portion, I'm not an expert about the county, but the county amount this year that we're paying them is $1,372,983. That supports the Commissioner's Office, the Sheriff's Office, the Department of Corrections, Registry of Deeds, the Riverside Rest Home, and Hyder House, and some other various smaller agencies. The tax base for the town of Lee, based on this last tax rate that we set, is $402,872, which raises about $13.6 million. The largest part of that particular part is the tax rate that we assess people in terms of their property. The next largest thing is motor vehicle permits, which is about $890,000. And then we get the money from the state for rooms and meals, which is about $223,000. And a New Hampshire block grant, a highway block grant for $114,000. The thing the legislature did for the towns this year is there's some special allocations. The portion that the town of Lee got was a little over $44,000. So we got that in this first year of the biennium, and we'll get some more next year in the second half of the biennium. So I'll take questions. And I don't know if maybe Brian wants to do the school portion so you get a closer view, good view of the whole text.
Let's see. Yep. Okay. Well, I know I put you through this boring process a few months ago explaining how we operate on the school side. The difference between how our district works and how most districts works is because we're a cooperative school district. So the formula on how the towns are, apportioned, I guess you could say, is that formula is set by the state. And obviously you think it'd be a nice, simple, math formula, and it's not. There's all types of derivatives in it, but the thing that really dictates what your share is are two big things. And that's one is the assessment of the property in your town, in each particular town in the district. And the second part is how many students you're putting into the district. And unfortunately, those numbers never coincide in the same year. They're always one's always 1 year behind from the other. So basically what we do is we take whatever the enrollment is on October 1st, and that becomes the enrollment for each town. And then we use the assessment from the previous year. And that's kind of how we back ourselves into it. But what we do is we send that amount to the town. The town has to put theirs in there, but not, for most towns or most districts, portion is always at minimum 2/3, if not 3/4 of the share of the apportion. So obviously the challenge really in this state is extremely difficult because we don't have a sales tax, we don't have an income tax. So how do we fund our schools? We fund them through property taxes. That's really where they come from. It's not something we're happy about, but it's just the way that the state happens to be set up. I don't have control over it, so I don't get upset over it because it has to do with our state legislators and how they determine to apportion it. But I don't really see any other way of funding schools besides the way they do. So what we do is we take right now this year we have our proposed budget for this year for the school district is about just over $47 million, and that's a 3.5% increase over last year, which has pretty much been our increases over the last several years. The issue that we have is that we don't have a lot of revenue to offset the increases. So our revenue really comes from either state grants, adequacy grants, things like that. And then there's revenue we can make off of food services or anything like. Maybe we have outside tuition. That's actually our biggest revenue because we have Barrington students that come to the high school, and that's a pretty large source of revenue for us. But in the overall scheme of things, revenue is a very, very small part of our budget. So we don't have that luxury like a private business would be, where, hey, let's just sell more product, bring in more money, and that way our budget just flows a lot easier. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And obviously you throw in the middle of that, trying to build a new middle school, and that really can, we've actually done a really good job at least planning for it over the next 5 years. So over the last 5 years, I should say, and over the next 5 years, how we're going to be handling it. It's not something we're just going to, if it passes, that it's just going to be one big, huge jump in your taxes on year one. Kind of like what happened in Dover or Newmarket with their, Dover with their new high school, Newmarket with their remodeled high school, where taxes went through the roof, and there's really no way around it because they just went out, bonded, and did it. We planned over the last 5 years putting money away to offset the first few years of the bond payment, so we don't have that spike at the beginning. We continue to do we have it figured in, so we can still do a 3.5% increase over the next 5 years. And then after that 5 years, it levels off, because what ends up happening at that 5-year mark is the high school. There's actually two bonds in the high school that when the high school was remodeled and added on to, we actually took out two bonds. That was almost 20 years ago. And those bonds are actually coming due. So we're reallocating the funds that we're currently paying for those bonds to pay for the middle school bond if it passes. So, and what we've done is at least try to smooth out that, so there's no spike. We've been able to smooth it out, but after that 5-year period, it pretty much levels out as far as increases in the budget. And then because what we've been able to do is take that portion, what we're paying for the bond, and keep that right at 1% of our increase in the budget each year. So that 1% increase is really what it is. Our biggest, I always say, the X factor each year when it comes to us. I mean, our number one cost, as is any business, is labor. So with labor comes benefits. We have collective bargaining agreements that determine how much they're going to get in a raise, and we try to keep competitive with their local districts. But not only that, the health insurance is a huge, and I'm sure Scott has this in the town on a little smaller level, but health insurance can vary from year to year. It can be, we had 1 year where it went up 0.4%. We've had years where it went up 15%. And that can literally be a several $100,000 swing over the course of a year for us, which can make a big difference. So that's the only thing and we've slowly gotten all the collective bargaining agreements in line with the split that we want it to be, and that has allowed us to help manage our costs. We never go back to the taxpayers and say, hey, like you hear a lot of the other districts each year, hey, by the way, we're short $1.5 million or $2 million. We need to go back to the taxpayers and the towns and ask for money. We've never had to do that. Our budgets have usually been pretty close. This year, we've had a little bit of help, especially in the town of Lee, because when the state passed their latest budget, when Governor Sununu signed that latest budget, they actually went back to adequacy grants that were shortchanged over the last several years, and they actually replenished them. So Lee is actually getting a pretty good portion of money. I don't have the exact number because we're still, I think the state's still trying to figure it out. But that goes to the town, go back to us. It doesn't go to the district, it goes back to town. And that money is actually going to help offset the tax increase that Lee was running now. It basically cut the increase in half. So at first it was a pretty big increase. Now it's not as bad. I mean, no increase is ever fun, but I think we've done a real good job over the last, at least the 2.5 years I've been there, of at least keeping the expenses in line, in control. And still trying to reach the goals that we have, which is providing the best education for our students. And our last rating that came out, we were second best school district in the state, behind Hanover, which we're always competing with. Hanover and us are always going back and forth, and that's something I think we should be proud of, and I think it actually helps with the values of our homes, as well as the people that move into town. Most people I know that move into town, when I run into them, I ask them why they moved here, and if most of them say the school district. So, and they love the fact that we're a small town. We have a lot of farms, and for me, this town is exactly like the town that I grew up in, which is why I moved here, not to mention the school district. So there's a lot of great things and great people in this town, and when people move here, they love everything about it. So I'm drawing out. I don't know if that's what you're for. Still on mute, Amanda?
Yeah, I was on mute. No, I think that's great. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask, either Brian or Scott? Everybody.
I have some comments I'd like to make.
All right, of course, Jeff.
Okay, Amanda, dear, you turned me loose. The really good news in all of this is that Amanda and I were aboard fighting for funds being returned to the local districts. And that was successful. And the money that we got back from the state, you can thank Amanda for, you can thank me for. The county portion is utterly fantastic. We are paying less to the county than we have previously, and that's because Ray Bauer, who's our neighbor here in Lee, and his team have been able to run Riverside Nursing Home in the black. They've been able to run County Corrections in the black, Hyder House in the black. Our county services are absolutely fantastic. We've got a great select board that keeps our town costs perfectly reasonable. We do a great job on that. All our thanks to Scott, to all the folks that make that happen. Our municipal services work beautifully. Okay, so where is there a problem in all of this? The problem is that we're going to see continuing rises in our school costs, and we're going to see continuing rises in our property taxes as a result. And we now have a substantial population in Lee that's retirees, that's people on fixed incomes, that's people who are farmers who can't afford to see their property taxes literally drive them out of the market in Lee. The other thing that's going to happen, and you have to see this coming, is that Riverview is opening up this enormous condo complex at the junction of Route 108 and Route 4. And all of a sudden, we're going to have a number of empty houses in Lee from retirees who haven't been able to pay their taxes here and are moving over to Riverview. Their houses are going to go on the market, and I really don't know what's going to happen to our real estate taxes if we have uninhabited properties sitting in Lee. Okay, I'll be quiet now.
Scott or Brian, do you want to say anything to what Jeff, some of the points that he just brought
help
up?
me here.
I agree with Jeff, and I agree with Brian. Brian stated it quite nicely in terms of when people come to this area, they come to the area for the school district. And you ask anybody that's buying a house, that's most likely what their answer is. The thing that I'm finding these days is just as soon as those people who moved in for the school district, their children get done with the school district and they go on to college or whatever, they contemplate moving out because they don't want to pay the taxes for that. So we're seeing that phenomenon as well. But I totally agree with Jeff. The people that are here that don't have kids and they're on retirement incomes or something, it's very, very difficult for them to pay their taxes. So I would agree with both of them.
Yeah, and also I don't think anyone really enjoys paying taxes. It's one of those necessary evils in life. The two things that are guaranteed, death and taxes. But, it's this is not a problem that is solely felt in Lee. There are a lot of towns out there that have the same fate, I guess you could have. And that's a concern of mine. I don't want to leave this town, but will I get priced out of this town eventually? I think people are paying more in Durham now than they're paying in Lee, but there's no. I mean, is there a solution to this problem? I mean, of rising taxes? I mean, I don't know. Does it come from the local level? Does it come from the state level? Does it come from the federal level? How do we tackle that issue? I mean, the one issue that we run into is we have to pay full boat for a new school, and there's no state aid. And I'm not blaming the state. It's just when you go down to, say, Massachusetts, where there's a lot of state aid, but of course they pay a lot more in taxes. So, they have an income tax state, they have a sales tax, they got everything else that goes along with it. So, who bears the brunt of pretty much anything a town or a school district wants are the homeowners. We don't have a lot of business in town. That's obviously by design, because we like our town the way it is. Keep it all at the Lee traffic circle, and let them pay the majority of taxes as far on the business side. But it is a tough problem to solve as far as getting it under control, because in order to get them to go down, we have to cut. And where do we cut? I mean, we don't. I don't have an answer for that question, and I don't know who does, but I do think it's something that it's a can that's going to get kicked down the road to the point where at some point we're going to have to pick the can up, and I don't know when that part is.
But Brian, the solution to this problem, I hate to say this hurts, is at the state level. We do a brilliant job locally, but we have two candidates for governor, one on either side, who have taken the no tax pledge, and we have one candidate who has not. And the fact is that unless we find a way to raise revenue at the state level and to kick that revenue back in the form of support for the towns, we in Lee are going to get murdered by property taxes.
No, I agree. And we're also running another problem on the school side, not our school district, but the school side statewide, where this adequacy of funding is now coming back to roost. Where you have the towns in the western part of the state that have low assessment values, and we still have not defined what an adequate education is, in the Constitution. And it's difficult in the state level because your hands are tied, because you have a Constitution that says, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that this is an issue that we've been dealing with for a long time, and I'm not, and I just don't want to get to the point where we're paying for someone else's school district, where we're already paying a good amount for our own school district, and that's the painful part, because they consider us, and that's why we don't get a lot of aid, is because they consider us to be a rich district, because our average income is much higher than the average income in the state. So that's a huge challenge, I think, that's coming down the road as well, because that decision last time hurt, and now it's coming back again.
Let me add something that, as we probably already remember, in terms of the last March vote, we expanded the commercial zone, so it's a little bit further up Route 4 going toward Durham. So it's now, instead of stopping at the little bridge there where Mick and Herb's was, it goes all the way up to where Sheep Road is and Old Mill Road. Yep. But the thing is, who's going to move in there? When are they going to move in there? So you've got more commercial stuff. But this last year, we added about $8 million to valuation from houses, which means there's $1 million more of accessible property in terms of out there. Unfortunately, most of that assessment, that $8 million, was from residences. And when a residence comes online, if those particular residents house any kids whatsoever, the amount of taxes that we get does not pay to educate those particular children. So as we build more houses, the Cheney development, the Chinburg development, those particular houses are costing us more money. So everybody that's in town already is paying a little bit of that when those particular houses come online. So it's a difficult situation.
Scott, are we still? When is the time frame for that water line coming down to the circle? Because I know it looks like they're getting ready to put stuff in there once that water line gets connected.
They're working on it now. They're supposed to be working on it through the winter, and then sometime in the spring they're supposed to be finishing it.
Oh, nice.
That will provide water to the I don't remember the number. I think it's 9 entities that are at the circle, so the state doesn't have to do that whole MBTE testing and stuff.
Yep.
But that will give access so that you could put some kind of restaurant facility behind the Irving station. There's supposed to be a strip mall in there. But that should be there soon. And then if any other business that's not on that list of 9 wants to attach, that's their cost. But there'll be customers of the Durham Public Works, so they'll pay a fee to Durham for accessing that particular water supply.
Interesting. And we don't know yet who's going in behind there, obviously, because they're just prepping the groundwork for whoever that could be.
As far as I know, the owner does not have any tenants yet. One of the things they're waiting for is the water line to come through.
Yep.
But yeah, they're prepping it. As you see, they're moving earth and all kinds of stuff, but they're prepping the area. But I think they're probably the tenants or whoever they're thinking about is probably just waiting for that line to come through. And when the line comes through, there'll probably be some kind of floodgates will open in terms of people expressing interest to get in there.
Right.
I have a question. Do we know where a lot of the money is? If you look at other schools, I myself went to Hanover. I love being here at Oyster River, and I know there must be places that we're spending more money than other schools. Do we know what those are? I have friends who've applied for jobs in the Oyster River School District and were shocked at how low the salary was for other school districts. So I'm just wondering, do we generally pay teachers more? Where are those expenses going?
Well, we're actually on the higher end. It's the entry level, because they're stepped depending on what their experience is, what their education is. So obviously, most of our teachers actually have master's degrees, and I believe there's certain positions that you're required to have a master's degree or higher. Some of them even have PhDs, and that obviously increases your pay. But the entry level is about the same. I don't know exactly what it is, but because they have the new contract being voted on in March. I don't have it in front of me by chance, but we know every time we go out and do a collective bargaining agreement, we actually survey the districts locally and across the state to see how we compare, because we don't want to be the highest, but we also don't want to be the lowest. We'd like to be a little bit above average, and it's worked out well for us because we've actually had some accomplished teachers in here who have gotten a lot of awards and been able to do some great things for the district. But our expense, as like I said before, as with any district or business or it is labor and benefits are the hugest expense we have. We're trying not to put as much money into the middle school. We're just trying to put enough in there to keep it going until we can find out in March whether that's going to go through or not. And then, if it doesn't, then we're going to have to put some money into it, and it's not going to be as efficient. So that's kind of where we're not spending money frivolously, because we do go over it line by line, department by department every year. We just had our workshop at the Lee Public Safety Complex a few weeks ago, and we went over every department line by line. We're not even adding any new positions this year. So we're spending wisely. It's just that expenses are going up each year, and adequacy grants change from year to year. Things change and we have to adjust accordingly. Over time, the state has pushed a lot of costs back onto us that weren't there before, but that's starting to level out a little bit, and we're starting to get a better control of that as far as forecasting. So it's a challenge. I'll be honest with you. It's the biggest challenge is making sure your expenses are in line. I mean, even to the point where we went through every single copier in the district and said, which copiers do we need? Which ones do we not? And we got rid of about a dozen copiers. We're like, listen, you can go use the one around the corner. you don't need to use this one. So going to 1-to-1 for the middle school actually cut our paper usage by like 2/3. It was unbelievable the amount that we saved just on paper. So, those little things you're spending a little more money, but it's saving you money in the long run, kind of like this new middle school. Spending a lot of money up front, but our operating costs are almost cut in half over the next 10 years. So,
Is there anything else anybody was dying to ask?
Is one presenter allowed to ask the other presenter a question?
Of course.
Okay, I'm going to put Brian on the spot.
oh, great.
One of the things that I've come to learn is Oyster River is very good if your student has particular issues, special needs or whatever like that.
Yep.
I've heard so many stories of a parent in Dover having problems getting the district to abide by their child's individual education plan.
Yep.
The person comes to Oyster River, all that goes away. Oyster River gives them, whatever the particular child needs. So I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying other districts don't. Have you found that to be the case in your experience, Brian? Not personally, I'm not asking that particular question, but in terms of generally, are you seeing the special education costs kind of escalate over the past few years?
They haven't escalated dramatically. I wouldn't even say they've escalated a lot, but
Okay.
the problem, the thing that we do is we try to stick to the law, and the law is pretty clear on if they have an IEP or a 504,
Mhm.
we are required by law to abide by that regardless.
Mhm.
And if you are not abiding by it, you put the district at risk,
Mhm.
which is why I don't understand why these other districts, don't abide by it. They try to get out of it, and a lot of it is they can convince the parents like, the service may not be needed, and they try to
Mhm.
save themselves. Well, we don't necessarily do that, and
Mhm.
but there are policies in line, and I've seen it firsthand, where if your student needs to be tuitioned out to a different school because they have a need that we can't provide,
Mhm.
there's a certain process that we have to go through. And that's literally like a 10 to 12 step process that they have to go through.
Yep.
And we have to have doctors sign off. We have to have educators sign off. And it gets all the way through. And a lot of times you'll get to step 3 or 4 and you're like, all right, this isn't going to work, but we can solve the problem doing this.
Hmm.
So I'm not, the budget for special ed is not going. If anything, actually went down last year a little bit,
Okay.
only because the needs, having to hire a paraeducator, we didn't need as many last year, but this year we needed about 12 more.
Hmm.
But paraeducators are, lower cost than a full-fledged teacher.
Mhm.
They're a fraction of the cost. So, I think one of the reasons is we have, first of all, the director of our special ed department is Catherine Plord, is absolutely phenomenal. She's very good at what she does.
Mhm.
We did hire an assistant for her last year because she couldn't really supply her services to all 4 schools without just being spread thin, and the kids end up paying the price. But we make it a point to really get involved. I mean, I'll be honest with you, my daughter's in the special ed program, and when we meet with the special ed team, it's 8 to 9 people that are in there trying to make
Mhm.
sure that we do the right thing, and we make sure that they reach that goal of graduation, and graduating with a level of competency that they can be a contributing member of society. And
Mhm.
and believe it or not, we've had 100% graduation of special ed students over the last 3 years. And not only that, we've actually had a huge portion of them going to 2 to
Hmm.
4 year colleges, more than I originally thought.
Excellent.
So it's really just it comes down to following the law. And there are a lot of districts that they don't have the budget to do it, and they'll put off hiring a paraeducator, where we have emergency funds for special ed, as well as facilities and things like that. So if we do have an emergency where we have to hire somebody,
Mhm.
and it wasn't quite in the budget, we have a fund we can dig into where we can do that.
Excellent.
So
Can I?
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was gonna say, I also, as a person, as a parent in the school district, we don't give out IEPs easily, and it's an incredibly hard thing. I hear those stories too of like, these people are moving here for all these reasons, and I think that does happen sometimes. But and I don't, as a person who's in in those programs, we don't have IEPs. We have 504s, and no one's wasting any extra cash on anything that I can see in my world.
Yeah.
I have to ask for what I get. So
There's
Yeah,
a little bit of good news on this topic, and until, I'm sorry for laughing, but I'll explain. Until last week, if your child was on an IEP and graduated, let's say at age 18, they were no longer eligible for services from DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, until they reached 21. It was a 3-year donut hole in which there were no services available for kids. As a result of that, parents and area agencies were working to keep kids in school past age 18 so that they would continue to get services funded by the school district, funded under the IEP. Okay? Last week, your state representative chaired the committee that got through a change in the legislation so that as soon as the legislature passes the bill and it's on the consent calendar, I'm confident that it will pass, the Department of Health and Human Services will take up the slack for kids who graduate at age 18 and are in need of services. And it will no longer be the school district's responsibility. So there's every incentive for Oyster River School District to get kids graduated, to get them moving, and they will then be eligible for DHHS services.
and I believe, and if I'm not mistaken, the county also supplies vocational transitional services for students coming out of high school as well. And I know because there are plans out there that they help these kids when they get out, they help them find a job, they check in with them to make sure that they have the services they need at their job, and that's when they're 18. So I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's a county service, vocational service, I believe. Like I said, don't quote me on that.
So we're now going to have a full panoply of services for kids coming out of the high school, provided by county and provided by DHHS.
Excellent. Good. That's actually very good news. I'm glad to hear that.
Your state rep did it. I chaired the committee. I put the legislation together with the Disability Rights Center, and we got it on the consent calendar. And I'm really proud of that.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. It's great news.
So I'm tempted to stir the pot a little bit, and I would love to do a mini poll, if it's possible, and get the feeling of you all. If we didn't have just property taxes, what would you want to see?
we're gonna have this on recording.
Yeah.
Well, that's the tough part, right?
Thanks, Amanda.
Well, I'm just curious what people think, because obviously you all know that I'm the Floterral, and when I get asked this question, it's not usually from Lee, but people are very strong into a sales tax, and I am not for that. I'll be very honest, but I'm very curious to find out, and I've never heard anything from Lee, and I don't know what you all are thinking.
I want to see a transfer from the very wealthy families that populate New Hampshire and that own lots of summer homes in New Hampshire and condos in New Hampshire. And the way I see that happening is a capital gains tax and a property transfer tax.
Well, that's interesting. No one's ever suggested that. That's an interesting thought.
Maybe I should
I'm gonna
run for
check
governor.
that one.
Does anyone else have any strong feelings? I mean, I don't want to call anyone out. I'm just curious, that's all, of what you've heard or what you think, or because I hadn't heard Jeff's idea. That's an interesting one.
Can we have toll booths just for people from Massachusetts that come up here? Just Massachusetts plates. That's it.
Noted.
Yeah, if it back when they had all the Claremont decisions and everything, there was a whole bunch of talk about how to fix it.
Mhm.
The only thing I've heard lately is the complaints about the taxes being high. I haven't heard anything in terms of people advocating for one thing or the other.
Okay.
So all I'm hearing is the complaint about the taxes. I'm not hearing anything in terms of people saying, I want a sales tax, I want an income tax, I want this other kind of tax. It's mostly just complaining about the tax bill.
That's funny. Okay, so just complaints.
Is that
Bummer.
good Republican friends? Just kidding, Scott.
I'm sorry. Oh, what? I missed that. What was it?
I said, is that because all your friends are Republicans?
I have friends that are Republicans and Democrats. Yeah, if I want to spill out my Republican views, I'm not too happy with the current. I joined a different Republican Party, not the one that happens to be in power. Just so you all know, I'm not very. What's a good word? I'm not very supportive of the current administration. I support the office, but not the person who is in it. So.
Okay.
So that's recorded, so that's on the record. So
Okay.
So I guess back to the tax issue. One thing I just wanted to point out is that if we don't have an income tax like Massachusetts and Maine, then we will still have the situation where if you live in New Hampshire and work in Mass, you pay state tax to Mass. But if you live in Mass and work in New Hampshire, then you still pay state tax to Mass, and New Hampshire loses out in both cases. But before we got to that point, I would be all for the high-end casino idea.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, my day job is a financial advisor, and I have clients that are debating whether to move to Maine or to move to New Hampshire. And so they think, well, my taxes are so much less in Maine. I'm like, well, let's sit down and go over them. And I do the income tax, the sales tax, the property tax on their $400,000 house in Elliott, or, you know, a $300,000 house in even Lee or Dover or where have you. And every time it still comes out cheaper to live in New Hampshire overall.
Yes.
So, and you know, people, and the thing about Maine is even if you live in New Hampshire, you work in Maine, not only are they going to take taxes from you, there's actually a portion of your spouse's tax they're going to take too. They really get you. And people don't always realize it. Like, I'm going to live over there because my taxes are cheaper. Well, it's not just your property taxes. You got to add in everything else. And every single time I've done that, and it's been a dozen times in the last year, New Hampshire's always come out better.
I have heard. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Amanda, can I ask in terms of, can I turn your question on its head kind of thing?
Of course.
Because the people that we have been talking about are the people that have a hard time paying the tax that is in Lee. We're talking about the people who are, you know, lower incomes, people who are on fixed incomes. Is there anything we can discuss in terms of assisting those people? Because I'm not hearing anybody that's got $1 million house or a $500,000 house saying, geez, I don't like to pay but it's not that they can't, they just don't like to.
Yeah.
But it's the people that, you know, are on fixed incomes or on lower, they're the ones that are actually having a problem paying their taxes. Is there something we can do to address those people?
Increase tax over a certain amount of like a certain amount of house or something like that, where it's like a stage staggered. It's a great idea.
Well, we got something like that. You can get assistance from the state. I don't know too much about the program, but if you're having problems paying your property taxes, but we've got people who are in Lee that, you know, have been here forever. They've either sold off land or, you know, they're getting older or whatever, and they have problems paying that $10,000 tax bill when it comes. And people who earn $30,000 or whatever, that's a big chunk of change for them. So.
Jeff, do you
There's no-
happen to have an answer to that? Sorry, Deb, didn't mean to talk over you. What were you going to say?
Scott's right on, and with on the one hand, the front office at the town is very receptive to people having difficulties, and they work creatively, and there are some funds, but without mentioning names or locations, I know that we've got folks in Lee whose homes are in foreclosure. We've got a veteran living in Lee who's disabled and who's going to lose his house because he can't afford to pay the taxes. And I've been poking around trying to figure out a way to help this out, and it's not there. There's just not a way.
So I was going to say that, so I just joined the Conservation Commission, and I know a lot of farms are putting their land in conservation easement to help with taxes. And I don't know how people find out about that and what exactly the process is. I don't know that yet. But maybe that's a way to help people is by helping them put their land in conservation easement.
Yeah, if there's land.
So, and I don't know, I don't know how people find out about that and all that kind of stuff, but that's just an idea. But that wouldn't help somebody who just had a house and no land.
They just had a really neat article or a conversation on NPR last night about that in Lyme, and how somehow in that particular town it was like 96% less taxes they had to pay. And so that might be something interesting to think about. They were talking about, do we really need to give such a huge amount of credit, or it's just a smaller percentage? So that's something interesting to look at, definitely. I don't know what our rates are, but
well, I think you're going to see like Newmarket is I think going to fall into that pit as well, because that bond just hit on the school that's been remodeled, and I know on an average $400,000 house there, the increase was about $3,000 a year.
Wow.
And that was mind-boggling. When I heard that, I'm like, so with $3,000 over the next few years? He goes, no, $3,000 this year. And the bill just showed up, and all of a sudden, boom, his mortgage payment went up, almost $300 a month. So it was quite a eye opener. But I just think of the people like we were just talking about, the people that are living check to check, that barely keeping their house together, and now they have a huge bill. Who knows if they even have kids in the district or not? And that was just, I don't know how well that was thought out, but I mean they're going to be in a worse boat than anything else. And matter of fact, that their tax rate may be competitive with ours now because of it's gone up so much, in Newmarket. It's a scary thought.
$3,000.
So I had another question. So Jeff, you talked about people moving to Riverwoods and all these houses being for sale. Is there anybody in town that keeps track of what houses are for sale and has an idea of what the real estate is doing in Lee? I don't know.
Oh, it's easy and it's fun. Get up on Zillow. And Zillow will show you the location of every house that's currently for sale. But what they don't show you is the people that are planning on moving over to Riverwoods, who will put their homes on the market, let's say next spring or a year from now. And talking to the local real estate agents, they're talking about 30 prime housing units in Lee possibly going on sale within the next year.
So the real estate people are the ones who are kind of keeping track of it then.
Yep.
I get this thing, you probably all got it from Keller Williams. Yes, I was intrigued by a couple of these entries. Days on the market, 1.
Yep.
So it's on the market and then it was off.
Yep.
So it sold just like that. The other one's 22, 26 days. The highest one was 152 days, but it
And,
seems like things are flying out in terms of people buying things. So
and the other thing that's going on is that houses are going over asking price.
yeah. Yep. So
I'm on the long range planning committee, and one of the things we've talked about is, you know, those houses all of a sudden come on the market. Those are people that are retired. They probably don't have kids in the district.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, those can go to people that have, that need that lower entry, because a lot of those are lower entry point houses.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden, you get, you know, 30 new families we didn't have before. That's a really big concern.
Yep. And you know,
Yeah, that's kind of, oops, sorry, that's kind of what I meant about, is there somebody in town keeping track of what houses are coming on the market, who's moving out, who's moving in, the impact on the town, the impact on the taxes. So just wondering.
that's a good question. We've got a great select board.
I was like, with that positive note, we could end this meeting. I wanted to end it about 10 minutes ago, but it was just so negative.
Amanda, can I ask a question?
Of course.
One of the things which I think most people know about is there's a committee in town called the Town Center Vision Committee, and we're working through doing a proposal for a municipal office building and renovating the town hall and taking a look at the parish house. Is that something this particular group would like a presentation on sometime? We're going to be doing some public ones, but one of the things that the TCVC talked about is doing presentations to different groups and organizations.
So Cord was actually going to join us tonight, but he is a single parent tonight. His wife is in New York City, and he had to put his kids to bed at the same time as this meeting. So he and I chatted briefly about that presentation, and he is going to actually create, because he did say he was working on that presentation right now, and he said that he was going to create a video that we could share to this group. And then he asked me what other groups might be a good idea. So I was actually going to throw it out to this group to via email, but we can talk about it right now, of who else that should be shared with.
Okay.
Please forgive me, folks. A beautiful woman just walked in the door, and she wants dinner. Good night.
Good night, Jeff.
Night, Jim.
Jen, I thought you might have some ideas of where or what groups we could potentially share this video with.
Whose name did you say, Amanda?
I said yours.
Oh. Yeah, there's a lot. I was like, is that Jen or Katrina? Okay. I think there's a lot of great groups. I think one of the best things to do is to share the video and get it viral, you know, get it on Neighborly and all those places where people really see if we have something that's going to be helpful. But you mean just like basic ideas that we're getting right now?
We could throw out some ideas, or we could think about it and get back to both Scott and Cord, because I know we only had a really quick conversation about it, and he just asked to have us brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that the TCVC has is in terms of getting information out. The last proposal we put forward that was voted down, it was like nobody seemed to be interested, and then like a week and a half before the vote, it was like all this interest and all this feedback. And it's like, where were you beforehand? So this particular proposal is just a municipal office building, nothing to do with the library, renovating the town hall and looking at the parish house. So what we want to do is get information out there to people, just so that they have it. We're not advocating for or against, we're just getting the information out. So we're looking for avenues to do that.
I think making one video that you can share and really get in different places is going to be the most important thing to do, because, you know, people just need information, and people tend to like I'm going to 1,000 times to 1,000 groups, 2-minute videos. things that tell you the basics information, maybe have a few of them. It's just something that shows the information, even if it's not, fabulous, but people are willing to give you 2 minutes anytime.
Thank you.
And then we post it all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah, Tina actually has a great web following, so I'm sure with the Farmers Market Facebook page, she can blast that out. My group for the Lee Conservation, very small, follow. So, I mean, I'm happy to send it out. And obviously with this group, I would do that as well. But my reach is not as big as Tina's.
Okay. Can I say something else?
Of course.
I'm just asking. I'm a guest. I have to ask permission. Jeff has left, but I would want to take this opportunity to thank you and Jeff. Hopefully he'll get the message, and Brian for your service to the town. It's not easy sometimes balancing your public duties and also your personal life. So I want to thank all three of you for the time that you put in providing governance for the citizens of the town of Lee. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's very sweet. Same to you.
Yep.
Yeah, agree.
That comes with a free coffee, but you have to pay for the coffee yourself.
I think, and very honestly, being a state rep is easier than being on the select board. So thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you, Scott. Scott,
Well,
I wouldn't trade places with you. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Oh, it's wonderful. I get no complaints. Everybody's so happy with everything we do.
And you get that cool outfit you'll get to wear at Leaf Air Day all the time.
You like that, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I have to put a plug. I'm up for election this year, and I think I'm running, so hopefully I can get a few Democrats to vote for me. Just kidding.
Keep
Just
showing
kidding.
up on these meetings, and you never know. You could get a whole following.
Oh, my goodness.
Well,
All right.
I also think that the piece that you said about the president administration will help with the Democratic committees.
Well, I think the thing that's missing in politics these days is compromise. There's so much polarization going on. Democrats are nasty people. They're bad. Republicans are nasty people. They're bad. I'm tired of that. I want my elected representatives to work together to make things better for the people that they're representing. I don't need all this other stuff. It just gets in the way.
They need to do what we sent them to Washington to do.
Yes. Yes.
Can I just say one of my favorite political moments ever recently was when you and Jeff Soloway were so absolutely wonderful and delightful on election day, and that sticks with me. That's exactly how we should be. That's who we should be. We should all be working together. Awesome.
I might not agree with everything he does, and he doesn't agree with everything that I do, but you can come together to get something done. So that's the important part.
Yay, let's do that in the whole country.
Well, as Brian said earlier, you can control what you can control. We can control the local stuff, and hopefully that replicates in other places, and hopefully we'll get over this whole thing and move forward and be more positive. So.
Yay.
With that's a good place to end. Let's end on a good high note. I love it.
Yay.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you all for joining. This is, I'm going to say it every month, but this is probably my favorite. So please share this, because yes, it is being recorded. I am going to post it, and you all please share it. I think it's important for those who are in the town to know what's happening. And I appreciate you both sharing what you know about the tax base and other things. So thank you again to you, Scott and Brian, for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Cool. Well, you all have a great night.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.